Before we begin, if you love intense, emotional stories where one brave choice changes everything, stay with me till the end. If you've ever wondered what you would do if you discovered a terrible truth that could cost you your career, your safety, or your future, this story is for you. Don't forget to follow and stay connected, because what starts here will only get darker, deeper, and more unforgettable. She had less than a minute. Maybe 90 seconds if luck was on her side. 90 seconds before the woman standing just outside the glass door finished her call and came back into the room. The woman who had been slowly killing him. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might give her away, but her hands were steady as she leaned closer, pretending to adjust the blood pressure cuff. Her voice dropped to a whisper so soft it barely disturbed the air. Your medicine is poison. She's killing you. For a brief, terrifying moment, he didn't react. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He just stared at her, and in those few seconds, she saw something shift behind his eyes. Calculation, awareness, and belief. He believed her instantly. Behind the glass, the woman smiled at something on her phone, completely unaware that 6 whispered words had just shattered her plan. To understand why a 28-year-old nurse would risk her entire future to save a man she barely knew, we have to go back 3 weeks earlier, before the fear, before the conspiracy, before everything began to unravel. Her name was Maya Carter. She worked nights at a discreet private recovery clinic in Bethesda, a place designed for wealthy patients who wanted care without attention. Marble floors, private rooms, staff trained not just in medicine but in silence. Power came here to heal quietly. Maya's shifts ran 3 evenings a week, on top of brutal day shifts at a major hospital and graduate classes twice weekly. She was 7 months away from finishing her nurse practitioner degree. 7 months away from changing her life and her family's life. Her mother worked double shifts as a home health aide. Her younger brother still believed hard work could beat the system because he watched Maya doing exactly that. She was exhausted, running on caffeine and stubborn determination, but she was focused. She had a promise to keep, to herself and to the memory of her grandmother, who had died years earlier because someone in a nursing home had noticed something was wrong and stayed silent. Then, one Tuesday evening in early April, Maya met the patient who would test that promise. His name was Daniel Seo, 38 years old. Quietly powerful. His chart said, International Logistics Consultant, which in Washington could mean anything from legitimate trade to something far more dangerous. He spoke Korean on the phone in short, controlled bursts, never raising his voice, yet somehow dominating every conversation. And he was never alone. His fiancée, Lena, attended every appointment. She was polished, elegant, the kind of woman people assumed was kind because she smiled at the right moments. She managed Daniel's medication schedule in a leather planner, adjusted his pillows, brought him water, asked soft, concerned questions. Other nurses admired her devotion. Maya watched carefully. Professional. Observant. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Daniel had stress-induced heart failure, controlled with standard medication, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors. His treatment plan should have stabilized him within weeks. But it didn't. By the 3rd visit, Maya noticed his vitals were getting worse, not better. His blood pressure crept higher. His heart rhythm became unstable. He complained of chest tightness. By late April, he looked more tired than when she'd first met him. Small details, easy to dismiss. But patterns don't lie. Maya reviewed his chart late one night after his appointment, spreading weeks of readings across the nurse's station. The numbers told a story that made no medical sense. The medication log, meticulously maintained by Lena, showed perfect compliance. Correct doses. Correct timing. So why was he declining? That question followed Maya to her car, where she sat scrolling through medical databases under the dim interior light. Drug interactions, toxicology reports. And then she found it: cardiac glycosides. Medications that could be life-saving in specific cases, but lethal in others. The symptoms matched perfectly. Someone wasn't giving Daniel his prescribed medication. Someone was poisoning him slowly, in a way that would look natural when his heart finally failed. Maya sat frozen, hands clenched on the steering wheel, trying to convince herself she was wrong. She wasn't. 2 days later, she saw Lena swap pills through the glass wall of the family lounge. Quick, practiced movements, replacing prescribed medication with pills from an unmarked bottle. It took less than a minute. Maya knew then that this wasn't a mistake. It was murder. She needed proof. When Lena stepped out during the next appointment, Maya photographed the pills inside the organizer. That night, she confirmed it online. The markings didn't match Daniel's prescription. By the weekend, Maya hadn't slept. Every option in front of her felt catastrophic. Reporting it officially could end her career before it began. Staying silent would make her complicit in a man's death. And worse, Daniel's world frightened her. The bodyguards. The staff's deference. The way power followed him like a shadow. If she accused the wrong person, she might not just lose her job. She might lose far more. On Monday night, she made her choice. She wouldn't go through channels. She wouldn't write reports. She would warn him directly. Tuesday evening, she stood in the locker room staring at her reflection, surprised to see her hands were steady. Fear didn't always look like shaking. Sometimes it looked like clarity. At 8:17 p.m., Lena stepped into the hallway to take a call. And Maya leaned in. "Your medicine is poison. She's killing you." The shift in Daniel was immediate. Stillness. Us. Trust. He gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Lena returned moments later, smiling, unaware that her control had just slipped away. Over the next weeks, Maya and Daniel worked in silence. He pretended to swallow the pills Lena gave him, disposing of them later. Maya discreetly provided his real medication during appointments. To everyone else, Daniel seemed to worsen, exactly as Lena expected. But behind the scenes, Daniel was investigating. He uncovered debts. Manipulation. A rival group that had targeted Lena's younger brother overseas, trapping her into compliance. He learned that Lena's lover, the man she believed loved her, had been assigned to control her. Even her pregnancy had been engineered to force her hand. By early June, Daniel understood the full scope of the betrayal. He confronted Lena in his study one quiet Sunday morning. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He laid out the evidence and gave her a choice: prison or disappearance. He gave her money to free her brother and leave forever. She chose to leave. Daniel lived. Maya kept her job, or so she thought. Because survival doesn't always mean safety, and the past doesn't disappear just because you want it to. The silence after Lena vanished didn't feel like peace. It felt like the moment after a storm, when the air is too still, when you know something else is coming, but you don't know from which direction. For Daniel, recovery was visible on paper. His vitals stabilized within weeks. Doctors were pleased, even confused. Stress reduction, they said. Better adherence to medication. No one suspected the truth, that the danger had been sitting beside him in designer clothes, smiling politely, counting pills. For Maya, recovery was something else entirely. She went back to her routine like nothing had happened. Day shifts at the hospital. Evening shifts at the private clinic. Classes twice a week. Exams looming closer with every sunrise. On the surface, everything looked normal. But inside her, the tension never released. Every time her phone buzzed unexpectedly, her stomach tightened. Every unfamiliar car outside her apartment made her glance twice. Every time she saw Daniel's name on the schedule, her pulse jumped. For 2 weeks after Lena left, Maya avoided his appointments. She swapped shifts, claimed conflicts, took on extra patients just to stay away. Saving his life had been the right thing, but it had carved something raw inside her. Fear doesn't vanish just because you survive it. Daniel noticed. He didn't push. He didn't call. He didn't send messages. He simply continued scheduling his appointments during her shifts, quietly waiting. The night she finally couldn't avoid him, she braced herself. He greeted her the same way he always had. Calm, respectful, no trace of entitlement. As she connected the monitors, he asked softly, "How are your exams coming along? You said September would be rough." She froze for half a second. "You remember that?" He nodded. "You mentioned it in May." It unsettled her more than she expected. In a world where people used memory as leverage, this felt different. Human. Over the next few weeks, that became the pattern. No grand gestures. No pressure. Just quiet questions. Thoughtful details. Once, he brought her a plain iced coffee exactly how she drank it. Another time, he asked how her mother's overnight shifts were going. Maya told herself it meant nothing. Gratitude, maybe. Shared trauma. Nothing she could afford to misread. Then August arrived, and with it, the thing she'd been dreading for years. Her mother collapsed at work, not dramatic. No headlines. Just exhaustion layered on top of unmanaged blood sugar and too many skipped meals. Maya spent days at her mother's bedside in the same hospital where she worked, watching monitors beep, feeling helpless in a way she hated. On the third day, Daniel appeared in the hallway. He didn't enter the room, didn't impose. He waited until Maya stepped out for coffee, then spoke carefully, like someone approaching a wound. "I heard about your mother." Maya didn't ask how. She didn't have the energy. "I arranged a consultation with an endocrinologist," he continued. "A good one. And meals for the next 2 weeks. Nothing fancy. Just help." She stared at him, exhausted tears threatening to spill. "Why?" she asked. "You saved my life," he said simply. "Let me help with yours." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was practical. And that made it harder to resist. In early September, Maya agreed to dinner. Not somewhere expensive. A quiet Korean barbecue place where the tables were scarred and the food was honest. They talked about everything except the poison. Her dream of opening a community clinic. His loneliness inside a powerful life. Movies they loved. Mistakes they regretted. For the first time in months, Maya laughed without fear behind it. For a moment, she thought maybe the danger had passed. She was wrong. October arrived with crisp air and falling leaves, and a registered letter waiting in her mailbox. She opened it standing in the hallway of her apartment building, still in scrubs. A law firm. Expensive. Aggressive. They represented Lena. The accusation was clean and brutal. Maya had made false claims that destroyed an engagement. Emotional distress. Financial harm. $500,000 in damages. And if it wasn't resolved quietly, Lena intended to file complaints with the nursing board. Maya's hands started shaking before she reached the end of the first page. Within days, the story leaked. Not the truth. Lena's version. Articles appeared in Korean American outlets, then spread online. Headlines framed Maya as a jealous nurse who crossed boundaries. Someone who manipulated a vulnerable patient. Someone who destroyed a family. Her name, her photo. Her workplace. The comments were vicious. People who had never met her demanded she lose her license. accused her of seducing patients, called her dangerous. This was the nightmare she had feared. An investigation could delay her graduation. Even if she was cleared, the shadow would follow her forever. Hospitals remembered accusations longer than vindications. Her supervisor called her into the office 2 days later. "We need to discuss concerns that have been raised," she said, voice neutral, eyes cold. Maya walked home that night in a fog, her future unraveling thread by thread. She called Daniel. "She's suing me," Maya said quietly. "She's trying to destroy my career." There was a pause on the line longer than usual. When Daniel spoke, his voice was controlled in a way that frightened her. "She violated the agreement," he said. "I'll handle this. Don't respond to anyone." Within days, his legal team moved. They released documents, signed agreements, wire transfers, proof that Lena had accepted money and agreed not to make claims against anyone connected to Daniel. The nursing board received medical records, expert testimony, documentation of Maya's actions, careful, professional, justified. The narrative collapsed. The lawsuit was withdrawn without explanation. The nursing board closed the inquiry. Articles were quietly deleted. A letter arrived one rainy morning. They commended her patient advocacy. Maya stood in her kitchen in pajamas, clutching the paper, and cried, not from relief alone, but from the realization of how close she'd come to losing everything. That night, sitting across from Daniel in a small restaurant, she finally said what had been weighing on her. "She tried to destroy me," Maya said, "even after you let her go." "She was desperate," Daniel replied. "Desperate people make terrible choices." Maya nodded, but something had shifted inside her. Mercy didn't equal safety. Doing the right thing didn't guarantee protection, and yet she didn't regret it. But the cost had been real. And as calm returned, another question began to surface, one neither of them said out loud yet. What does a future look like when truth, danger, and trust are permanently tangled together? Late November arrived quietly, the way endings often do, not with noise, but with weight. Maya sat in the testing center on a gray Tuesday morning, staring at a screen that held 6 years of sacrifice behind it. 3 hours. 200 questions. Everything she'd worked for balanced on her ability to stay calm. She finished, submitted, and sat still for a long moment afterward, hands folded in her lap, heart thudding. It was done. Whether she had passed or failed no longer belonged to effort, only to fate. 10 days later, she was standing in the pharmacy aisle of a CVS when her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the subject line. "Congratulations." She read it twice. Then a third time. Her knees went weak, and she had to grip the shelf beside her, laughing and crying at the same time as strangers pushed carts past her, unaware that a life had just turned a corner. Maya Carter, FNP. Her mother cried harder than she did. Her brother gave a toast that made everyone tear up. A simple sheet cake sat on the table, blue icing slightly smudged, perfect in its imperfection. Daniel didn't attend. It was too soon, too complicated. But the next morning, flowers arrived. White lilies and pale blue hydrangeas. The note was handwritten. "You did this yourself. I'm just grateful I get to witness it." Early December, Daniel invited her to his home for dinner. Not a business dinner. Not a statement. Just dinner. She arrived wearing jeans and a soft sweater, nerves fluttering. He opened the door without a suit, without the armor he wore in public. Just a man who looked hopeful. They sat in the same room where Lena had once been confronted, but the energy was different now. The past felt present, but no longer in control. "I need to be honest," Daniel said. "My world is dangerous. I can't promise you safety. But I can promise transparency, And I'll never ask you to compromise who you are. Maya inhaled slowly. Your world scares me, she admitted. What happened with Lena almost destroyed my career. I don't know if I can live like that. He nodded. No argument. No persuasion. If you walk away, he said, I'll respect it. That was the moment that changed everything. Not power, not money. Choice. Okay, she said quietly. Let's try. They cooked together that night, burned the garlic, laughed at the smoke, ate food that was far from perfect and somehow exactly right. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like something she had to survive. It felt like something she could build. 6 months later, sunlight poured through the front windows of a small clinic in Columbia Heights. The sign above the door read, Cornerstone Community Health. It was hers. Daniel had funded it as an investment, not ownership. Maya controlled every decision: staffing, policies, pricing, sliding scale fees. Preventive care. A place for people who'd been ignored too long. They were still together. Carefully. Honestly. Navigating boundaries. Learning what trust looked like without fear behind it. Daniel slowly stepped away from the shadows of his past. Not because Maya demanded it, but because being seen by her made him want to be better. Lena never returned. Through quiet channels, Daniel learned she was living an ordinary life somewhere far away. Her brother was safe. The past had loosened its grip. Sometimes people asked Maya if she regretted speaking up. She always gave the same answer. Staying silent would have cost her more. Integrity isn't free. Courage isn't safe. But some truths are worth everything they take. On a warm Sunday morning, Maya and Daniel walked through a farmer's market, debating fruit like any other couple. Ordinary. Real. Alive. 6 whispered words had saved his life. Everything that followed proved they saved something else too. Their ability to trust, to choose, to build something honest out of something broken. And now, before you go, let me ask you this. If you were in her place, would you have stayed silent to protect your future? Or would you have whispered the truth, no matter the cost? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I read every one. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs the reminder that courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers.